On the night of December 2nd, 1984, a cloud of toxic gas leaked from a pesticide factory in Bhopal, India, and drifted over a city of 900,000 people while they slept. People woke up unable to breathe, their eyes burning, vomiting uncontrollably as their lungs filled with fluid. Thousands died in their beds before they understood what was happening. Those who ran outside ran directly into the cloud. Parents lost children in the chaos. Children lost parents. Families were separated in the dark and never found each other again. By morning, the streets of Bhopal were lined with bodies. The official death toll was 3,787 people. Independent researchers estimate the true number was closer to 15,000. The company responsible paid a settlement that worked out to roughly $500 per victim. No senior executive ever spent a single day in prison. This is the Bhopal disaster, the worst industrial accident in human history, and it is a story about what happens when a corporation decides that safety is too expensive. The factory at the center of the disaster was owned by Union Carbide Corporation, an American chemical company that had built the plant in Bhopal in 1969 to produce pesticides for Indian agriculture. By the early 1980s, the plant was losing money, and Union Carbide began cutting costs aggressively. Safety systems that had been standard practice were allowed to deteriorate or were switched off entirely to save money. A refrigeration unit designed to keep a highly toxic chemical called methyl isocyanate stable was shut down in 1984 because it was deemed too expensive to run. A flare tower designed to burn off any gas that escaped was out of service on the night of the disaster. A scrubber system designed to neutralize escaping gas with caustic soda was also not functioning. 3 of the 4 primary safety systems designed specifically to prevent exactly what happened that night were not working. Union Carbide knew this. Their own internal audit in 1982 had identified over 60 safety hazards at the Bhopal plant and described the facility as presenting a serious potential for a sizable accident. The report was filed. Nothing was fixed. On the night of December 6, 1984, water entered a storage tank containing 42 tons of methyl isocyanate, triggering a violent chemical reaction. The temperature and pressure inside the tank rose rapidly until it failed catastrophically. A massive cloud of toxic gas was released directly over the city. Methyl isocyanate reacts with moisture in the lungs, converting to cyanide compounds and destroying lung tissue from the inside. Survivors described a burning sensation in their eyes and throats so intense they could not keep them open. Those who survived the initial exposure suffered permanent damage to their eyes, lungs, and immune systems. Studies conducted in the years after the disaster found dramatically elevated rates of cancer, neurological disorders, and birth defects in the affected population. Children born to survivors in the years after the disaster showed higher rates of physical and developmental abnormalities than the general population. The suffering did not end on the night of December 2nd. It continued for decades. Union Carbide's initial response was to deny responsibility and claim the disaster had been caused by sabotage by a disgruntled employee. No credible evidence for this claim was ever produced. In 1989, Union Carbide agreed to pay $470 million in compensation to the Indian government to settle all claims arising from the disaster. That sounds like a significant sum until you divide it by the number of victims. For the 500,000 people who were exposed to the gas that night, the settlement worked out to approximately $940 each. For For the families of those who died, it worked out to roughly $2,200 per life. Union Carbide's CEO at the time of the disaster was a man named Warren Anderson. He flew to India after the disaster and was briefly detained by Indian authorities before being released on bail and allowed to return to the United States. Indian courts subsequently charged Anderson with manslaughter and culpable homicide. The United States government refused to extradite him. Anderson retired to a comfortable life in the Hamptons in New York. He died in 2014 at the age of 92, having never faced trial for the deaths of thousands of people. Union Carbide was acquired by Dow Chemical in 2001. Dow Chemical has consistently maintained that its acquisition of Union Carbide did not include liability for the Bhopal disaster and has refused to accept responsibility for the ongoing health crisis in the affected communities. The factory site in Bhopal was never properly cleaned up. Toxic waste from the plant leached into the groundwater for decades after the disaster. Studies have found elevated levels of toxic chemicals in the soil and water around the site that persist to this day. Residents living near the abandoned factory have reported higher rates of illness than the surrounding population for 40 years. The Bhopal disaster forced changes to industrial safety regulations in the United States through legislation known as the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act. Americans got better safety regulations because of what happened in India. The people of Bhopal got $500 and a contaminated water supply. Warren Anderson lived to 92 in the Hamptons. 15,000 people in Bhopal did not live at all. The question Bhopal forces you to ask is not whether corporations are capable of knowing their product is dangerous and doing nothing about it. They already proved they are. The question is whether $500 is what a human life is worth when the person making that calculation lives on the other side of the world.